Well, if you could tell me a little bit about your company and about your current ventures.
Sure. So Jaarvis itself is a venture builder, and what we do is we use that as a platform to focus on startups, and there are really essentially two main market segments that we're focused on: the marketplaces, the O2Os, as well as the IoTs, which is the Internet of Things. As my own background, I started as I spent 20 years in venture capital, private equity investment, and if you think about what all this is all about, essentially it's about identifying teams and businesses and helping them scale up. And after I left that, one of my first things that I did was I spent time as the executive chairman for GlobalVan, which is a Hong Kong-based startup, but which has now scaled into more than 10 cities throughout Asia. One of the things that I felt like I could really do, or we could really do, and share some of our startup experience is create this platform whereby a lot of the younger startups can come and really sit in an environment where they could absorb and learn from us. And it could be some of the challenges we have faced before, but I think more importantly, in a very structured format, right? What does it really take to build a startup? Now, one can spend 12 months, 15 months, 2 years building their startup and getting from point A to point B. But I think what we want to try and do is accelerate and compact the entire process into 4 months or 5 months. And time to market is important, and that's what we're trying to do.
Well, today one of the main issues for new startups is the fund. So, what would you say on that?
Yeah.
What would be your say on that?
I think funding obviously is important. I think capital is the oxygen of any business, right? Not just startups. However, I also want to say that the most valuable resource that any startups can get from the Jaarvis Accelerator, they will get some dollars, that's for sure, but I think it's more the guidance and the mentorship and the advice that they will get. So, if we are able, for a startup, every day there is the 10, 20 challenges that they have to meet and overcome and deal with. Any one mistake, could be potentially fatal, right, and just cost the end of the startup. And two, even if it's not, they might cause them to go down a path 6 months, a year down, whereby they are burning a lot of capital. They have to pay for overheads, and they might have spent a lot of marketing dollars and all that, which have all gone to waste. So what is the value of that if we were able to guide a startup away from all of those? So I think what we want to do is we want to provide all of that. We want to ensure that the startups themselves can be guided away from pitfalls, away from mistakes. But at the same time, we realize that funding is needed, right? And so we will work with them and will fund them to get them appropriately, to get them to get their product started. But I think the capital raising window today it's not a bad one for raising capital, obviously. But I think we do have to think ahead and remember that it's not always going to be the case. And so I think if you can train a startup to have a mentality whereby capital is important, but using our brains and using our other sort of resources to get to where we want is even more challenging and more important, I think we would have done fulfill our objective.
That's really nice. Please tell me about your experience along the way and why an entrepreneur company.
So as I mentioned, I spent 20 years in investing in early stage companies, so in that process, it was, it's like I said, it was all about identifying the businesses and the teams and then working with them. Defining the teams and all that is one part of the process, but the real work comes after you invested in the business, right? It's sitting down with the founders or the CEO and putting a good team around him. It's about market strategy. It's about how do we market and how we position ourselves and all that. It's about building up the revenues, about building up the revenue model and business model and all of that. And that is something that really excites me. When I moved on from that and I took on a very, very hands-on intensive role with GoGoVan, I was in charge of overall strategy, I was in charge of capital raising, I was in charge of international expansion and markets development and all that. And it was great because every day I would literally jump out of bed because there's that 3 or 4 meetings that we would do that could potentially be game-changing for the company. And that is really what drives me on. I think I'm fortunate enough to have had a relatively good set of career so far, but I think it's the fresh set of challenges every day, and the knowing that I could make an impact, right? That really drives me on.
That's really nice. Like for a country like India, mostly we can see like women entrepreneurs coming out from their houses. But what would you say on that? Like, is it only restricted to the women entrepreneurs, or like even men have equal opportunities in your company?
Oh, absolutely. I think we are equal opportunity environment, and we encourage people to be very open and transparent and share. We see all our employees really as a family, to be honest. I think India generally has a lot of potential. If you look at the startup scene around Asia now, what the one common trend obviously is that the startup scene is becoming more active. Everywhere across Asia is becoming more active. Obviously, some countries are more developed than others. So China is very advanced. India maybe less so, right? But India has I like to think this, and I like to tell my colleagues as well, India has far too much potential not to do a lot better, right? I mean, we've got world-class management. I mean, if you look at a lot of the Fortune 500 and CEOs of leading banks and all that, a lot of them originally came from India. We've got a lot of a deep bench of engineering technical expertise. And we speak, India obviously has a strong command of English. And all of this are very fundamental to being able to compete on a global basis. And so for me, it's not so much a question of whether, but it's a question of when we will start seeing Indian startup technology companies that will start competing very effectively on a global basis.
That's nice. I would also like to ask you, is your company linked with any government organization?
No, we are a private enterprise, and it was started by myself and a co-founder. So far we've been funded primarily through our own capital resources, as well as some external set of investors, all of which are from the private sector as well. There have been some expression of interest from government-related entities who feel like they like what we're doing. One of the very positive outcome that we are doing is that we are helping. We play a small role, but I think a critical role in encouraging innovation and entrepreneurship, right? And I think a lot of governments around the world are starting to realize that innovation, entrepreneurship can actually be a very big positive, obviously, to economic growth and create jobs and all of that. Hong Kong, for example, is very dependent, and even Singapore is very dependent on finance and the property sector, right? And so governments, both in Hong Kong and Singapore, are trying to encourage innovation, entrepreneurship. And same thing here in India. I think it is probably fair to say any graduate coming out right now, or a younger generation, will say, I want to get into a really good school, and then after that I want to have a very secure job, either with the government or with a MNC, for example, right? But I do think that to the extent that we can encourage entrepreneurship and innovation, and allow people to express themselves, express their desire to want to do whatever they want to do in their chosen career, I think that's a huge positive.
Okay. Any kind of CSR activity your organization is involved in?
Well, like I said, I think part of the motivation, there's really two aspects why we chose to we embark on this journey for Jaarvis Accelerator. One is as a result of my spending 20 years as an investor and sitting on a board and guiding management team, and also as the chairman for GoGo and guiding the team and all that, we thought we wanted to find an institutional way or a way to institutionalize that sort of mentoring, right? To be able to help push startups, guide them away from pitfalls and mistakes and all of that. So that was obviously one aspect of it. The other aspect is to try and encourage innovation and entrepreneurship, right? And so to the extent that, you know, we can help produce, let's say, another equivalent of a Flipkart here, for example. I know that's a long stretch, but I'm just saying that as an example. And that be served as a leading example for the younger generation, and their hands-on spur, you know, more people getting into the startup scene and encouraging themselves to express themselves in an innovative way. Then I think we would have achieved something, an impact that is far more than just dollars and cents. It will have a lot of good social impact as well.